So recently I've been looking at a lot of MMOs, and all the new ones that kind of caught my eye were mostly Eastern developed games and one Western one. And them being Blue Protocol and Tencent's Tarisland, which is something I'm going to be talking about today, and Ashes of Creation's ambitious MMO. Their development was pretty open and transparent, which I kind of love. I played a ton of MMOs back in the day, even recently as last year. I tried Lost Ark. I love my experience playing that. I don't like the progression system, which is why I fell off. I played Mape Story back in the day, which is more of a friend game, play with friends. But those experiences were the reason I fell in love with the genre in the first place. Getting the experience, leveling up with friends, creating these stories that we wouldn't otherwise in real life. And Tarisland is pretty much that catalyst of making friends and building these experiences with these new players you find out in the world. So let's get into Tarisland a little bit. This game is created by Tencent, one of the biggest Chinese video game companies out there, owning like League of Legends. Man, there's so much more. They own a lot. They own a lot. Riot is their biggest acquisition in recent years, if I'm remembering. So Tarisland is kind of being developed on the purposes of WoW not being it's a big market for China, but there are publishing laws and publishing deals that Blizzard and the Chinese government are kind of iffy with. So WoW in China is kind of up in the air. It kind of presents this massive opportunity for Tencent to build something like WoW and gather that audience in China, even in the Western too, because WoW is pretty big and worldwide, so it's natural to gather some of the other player base of WoW into Tarisland because of all the similarities, the art style of being cartoonish, the combat of tab targeting. There are a lot of similarities for sure. So they held a closed beta test a while back, but this game is set to release sometime this year, and this is the second closed beta test, and there's only like 2 more months in the year, so something has to give, either a delay or a massive promotional release. But the version I played with was closed beta 2, and that beta started on November the 16th. And it was kind of weird on how they started the beta, because they held back content and was rolling out dungeons and little content pieces throughout the week. So on day one, there are a lot of content to start off with. You start with the tutorial zone, you do all the tutorial stuff, they drop you out in the open world, you get your first 2 dungeons, and you kind of just do the dungeon and crafting the first day, which is kind of not ideal when you want to test like all the aspects of the game as fast as you can. But I thought that rolling out content day by day was kind of easy for people who have full-time jobs and can't play games that often. So the first day was max level with all the dungeons, all the crafting stuff, and all the tutorial that gets you going and living in the world. And as the second day rolls by, you get increased level cap, get another dungeon, you get more story moments. And that kind of rolled out all the way to the 7th day. And on the 7th day, it released all the big endgame content with level 40 dungeons, with the 10-player raid, and 3v3 PvP mode. One of the massive simulators to WoW is the cartoonish art style. I actually really love it. I like it a lot more than WoW. I feel like WoW is more dark fantasy, more edgy in that kind of way, but the art style in Tarisland is bright, is vibrant, it's a lot more joyous to be in. And the vistas you look around, it's kind of it varies. to say the least, and it should. It's an MMO with diverse zones. But there's something about this Tarisland art style that just grabs me, that makes me look at every detail of like the shadows, the light beams, the physics of the trees and the grass. It's I love it. It looks really good. Now, Tarisland is not an ambitious game like Ashes of Creation or anything like that. Even I would even say Lost Ark, because Lost Ark had the island system. They have the monster, I forgot what it's, the arena mode, kind of like the Monster Hunter thing. And those are the aspects that I love about Lost Ark. Going around to the islands, going to like the monster hunts with your buddies. Those things I love. I just didn't like the leveling and progression and stuff like that. But Tarisland doesn't do anything new, doesn't flip the book on MMOs or anything like that. They still have the holy trinity with tank, DPS, and healer, and matchmaking systems for all the group plays like dungeons, raids, and PvP. And I know that's kind of contentious for a lot of hardcore MMO fans, because matchmaking is good for people who kind of want to get things done at a relatively fast pace, right? Know what they're going into and know how long that activity would take. I feel like Final Fantasy XIV kind of invented the MMO story. When I played MMO before, I know nothing about the stories, the characters, the world, nothing. But in Final Fantasy XIV, that really changed, and I kind of look at MMOs a little differently. Now I try to read every text, I try to read the dialogues that characters have, I try to listen to all the voice acting, and all that was cemented because of 14 and the story they produced. And that's something I wouldn't have really paid attention to if I didn't hear about how amazing the 14 story was. And with Tarisland, they kind of added a main story here also with voice acting, character models, and like crazy cinematics. It's pretty good, except for the voice acting, which is atrocious in my opinion. It's off sync, they don't have feeling in it. It is very jarring to watch. That's why I kind of skipped it, and it is beta, so I don't really mind skipping these kind of cutscenes. I did watch some of them. They are pretty cool set pieces and own pieces to set up what's coming up next. So on the last 2 days, I talked about them releasing the end game stuff with the higher level dungeon, which is pretty challenging if we have a team of pugs. But they also had the 10-player raid, which I didn't get to because I'm still not at item level. The 3v3 PvP mode, which was, I don't engage in PvP at all in any game, and this game is not the exception. I really hate the PvP in this game. There's no balance in anything. You know, I can only go in with pugs because there's not a lot of people that I know play MMOs like this. The 2 modes that I played, which was available on day 1, and then the 3v3 was available on day 7. So the first day was kind of like a payload Overwatch kind of mode, which is a lot faster than Overwatch. So the goal is to destroy the other team's tank before they get it to the other side of the map, which is pretty much the payload. And then you kind of switch sides after every round. And then the 3v3 is just an arena 3v3 mode, which is self-explanatory. But that's not something I really engaged in for this review or impression. So I'm just gonna leave that aside for now. But I really love the dungeons, and they kind of vary in mechanical ways. They don't really recycle mechanics in dungeons or raids, but they kind of are static, and grinding them are pretty boring if you have to do them multiple times in a day. And it's kind of bummed that these set dungeons are self-explanatory and not difficult to challenge at all, even in the normal to elite difficulty. But there is one mode that was locked throughout the whole week of beta, and it wasn't released until the last day of content release, this being the arcane round. And this mode kind of fixed the thought of how I feel the dungeons are so samey and static. So in Arcane Realms, you kind of had two affixes, which kind of changes some of the mechanics or adds mechanics to the dungeons that we've done recently. So how it works is every day a dungeon and one affix will change into something different. And every third day, there will be another affix which will add a new mechanic to the dungeon. So this kind of adds a lot of randomness and flavor to every dungeon run that we otherwise would have done the same thing over and over again. And from my understanding, the affixes will change with every season. So right now there's about six to seven daily affixes that will change, and there are about 4 or 5 3-day affixes that will change every 3 days. And those, so this is pretty exciting for people who love to do the dungeons and grind. I hope they add to the Arcane Realm system and affixes and stuff like that to make dungeons more engaging and less brain dead gameplay dungeons. I've talked all about the dungeons and some of the development ideologies of this, but I didn't talk about the combat or anything like that, or even the classes for that matter. There are 9 classes for the beta, and most of the classes have dual roles. So some of them can be a healer and a ranged DPS. Some of them can be a melee DPS and a tank, or some combination of that. So the role I played, or the class that I played, was a kind of barbarian fighter, and that had dual roles of a tank and a melee DPS, which is cool when I'm in a party and we need a tank other than a DPS, because tanks are pretty hard to come by. And switching that on the fly is pretty good for matchmaking purposes. And a lot of MMOs nowadays, they kind of went away with the fully customized playstyles and went with the more heavy rotation based combat. And for Tarisland, there's a lot of customizable abilities and options that you can play with. Of course, they have the skill tree, which you can add and remove points at will to your playstyle. There's another kind of enchantment system where you can add affixes to your weapons, maybe add a little more damage to it or to your armor, anything like that. And there's another system like the Paragon system, which kind of upgrades all your passive abilities, like getting more attack abilities, getting more MP regeneration, anything that kind of boosts your stats just a little bit for that mid-max playstyle. For me, this is a good change of pace, because all the MMOs that I played is kind of set in what playstyle you should be, and like that's the playstyle you play throughout the whole game. Changing up your abilities in the way you feel like you want to play today, it's good for people who want different playstyles for every day they play. Sometimes you want to be a tank that freaking heals all the damage and goes no lower than 50% of HP. Sometimes you want to be a archer who kind of takes down the AoEs. There's a lot of playstyles that the game caters to, and you just have to find which one is perfect for you. And kind of the last thing I want to talk about before I go into my final thoughts on Tarisland, it's the pay to win aspect of the game. The game advertised itself as a non-pay to win game, which is completely false, and they should remove that promotion on every egg they have, because you are paying to play this game in some aspects. A lot of it is just like bullshit mobile ungated stuff, which I freaking hate those. Just let me play the game as much as I want. I'm still playing the game. And for it to be saying it is a non-free to play game is completely bogus. But to get into how they kind of went around it is, I guess, is you don't pay money directly to get the items or some of the items you need. You kind of pay money to get gems, and then you convert those gems to gold coins, and then you can use those gold coins for stuff in the marketplace, in the auction house or whatever. And then not only that, you can use currency to add more points to a daily cap. So like a mobile game where you buy energy to get more time to play the certain mode or whatever, I absolutely hate that. And that is tied to like gathering and crafting. That's something you do on your off time. You do at maybe 3-4 hours at a time, right? It's not something you do for an hour. You stop and then you go back to another day or two. Gathering and crafting is something you kind of just lounge around and kind of let it take you wherever it is. And then usually for me personally, I like to take my time with that. So I usually, when I'm doing a farm run or a gathering run or something like that, I take my time, and it usually goes to like 3 to 4, maybe 5 hours of playing. And a lot of that can change. I mean, they don't really need that currency system for crafting and gathering. They want to use that for cosmetic stuff. I mean, they do have cosmetic stuff, of course. They want to use it for cosmetic stuff, and then stuff for the auction house that isn't gear. That's fine. I think that's fair, and people can live with that. But most of the backlash of the pay to win aspect of the game is because I feel like they misled people thinking that this is a non-pay to win game. And again, it is definitely a pay to win game. They told us that's not gonna be pay to win, but after going in and playing it, it's completely and utterly pay to win. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys think it's pay to win? There's a lot of people loving the game who kind of don't think so, but I'm really enjoying it, and I 100% do think this is a pay to win game. But let me know what you think, and maybe we can have a good discussion out of it. All right, so these are some of my thoughts of the Tarisland Beta. It was an okay experience. There's a lot of positives that I could take away and a lot of negatives. One of the big positive is the narrator when you're in a dungeon. That narrator tells you what the mechanics is coming. Like, you need to get out of the circle, you need to dodge the enemy, you need to stay away from your buddies, you need to, stand in front of your buddies, stuff like that. And I feel like that's a really cool addition to an MMO where a lot of combat can be not distracting, but it can be a lot, and it's hard to follow what you're seeing and what you're hearing. So that's a really great addition that a lot of people will benefit from. And of course, like we talked about, the combat and the customization, and a lot of those were positive for me because I could play with however I want, even though there is a recommendation tab that kind of sets up your skill tree. But even then, I kind of diverted a little bit from that recommendation and kind of added my own flavor to it, which is cool. In my opinion, from Final Fantasy XIV player perspective, there isn't that. There isn't a lot of player combat customization. It's a lot of static rotations. Just getting used to rotations and doing the mechanics. And when you do that, you'll be in a good place. And that's not the case with Tarisland. There's a lot of details that you can configure to your own playstyle. And I feel like this is a positive and negative thing, but it's mostly a positive thing. It's the fact that you can play Tarisland on both PC and mobile. And that is something that's coming more custom nowadays, because freaking mobile games are becoming insane. But the only games I've seen, the only MMO game I've seen that uses mobile and PC like as the same structure and the same like crossplay stuff is Albion Online. And that's a game I kind of backed when it was in the alpha state, and that game is way too hardcore for me. it's good to have both options. For me, having the PC options to do the dungeons and all the hardcore content, or anything with a little more button pressing, kind of like doing that on the PC. And to switch over to mobile and play on my bed or on my couch, doing all the daily stuff, all the gathering, maybe some crafting, stuff like that, that's pretty accessible for everyone. And it's good because not a lot of people can or want to sit at their PC for like hours and hours, and yeah, picking up your phone and doing the same thing, I guess, in a different environment, and be refreshing. Let's get into some of the bad stuff that I don't like at all. I mentioned some of them throughout the video, but the voice acting and the cutscenes has a lot to be desired. The cutscenes themselves are pretty good, and they kind of engage you with the story in the amount they can, but the voice acting and the audio synced with it is completely not done, and that just takes me out of any world building or any story moment. If I can't see their lips syncing with the character models, it's kind of very jarring, and I kind of skip it. And of course, like we talk about the pay to win stuff with time gating activities, like gathering, crafting, and dungeon rewards. That's kind of a shitty thing that shouldn't be in MMOs, I guess, but you know, companies have to do what they do to get revenue and make more content or make a new game or something like that. There are a lot of positive and negatives for sure, but even after playing Tarisland for the past week, I still enjoyed my time. I still kind of think about logging in and doing the daily activities, doing the dungeons, doing the arcane round dungeons. Those is always in the back of my mind of recent. And I feel like Tarisland has a place in the MMO place. They have to do something a little different. A lot of this is similar. They play it safe with a lot of systems and mechanics, and they just need something. But overall, I really enjoyed my time with Tarisland the past weeks, and I can't wait to see what they do with the full release, to see what the max level is, see how people perceive the game at full release. Because right now, there are a lot of people who are just bashing on the game because of the pay to win stuff, and that's justified. I don't like being lied to, especially by a company, big company like Tencent, but there is something here with Tarisland, even though we don't agree with business decision. If you guys liked anything that I've talked about here, or any of the videos I've done, like it, comment on it, give me some advice on things that I should do better, subscribe, even anything like that can help. I want to talk about video games and the industry, and a lot of it comes from the conversation that I'm having with you guys, and yeah, we can keep it going.